Do you like my chair's butt? Made of human fat. Get a pic before it turns rancid.
Great, well, I'm off to go kill myself.
Modok is a stop-motion animated show created by Jordan Blum and Patton Oswalt, released back in 2021, following the escapades of nobody's favorite supervillain, Modok.
Get ready for a surprise!
Originally, the show was being developed through Marvel's then TV division, which was responsible for other shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, and the fan-favorite critical darling, Iron Fist. With animation for the series being handled by Stupid Buddy Studios, the same guys responsible for Robot Chicken. Though the series was in a weird spot during production, as it was officially greenlit at Hulu in February of 2019, but in December of that year, Marvel Studios, the MCU part of the brand, folded the entirety of the TV division into itself, which then wasn't helped when COVID started up a couple months later and everything was put on lockdown. But after being dealt that absolutely terrible hand, the show was able to finally be released on Hulu to an unimpressed audience. The show did not make waves when it came out, existing in the public eye for like a week, and then quickly disappearing forever. To put this into perspective, the show came out the exact same year as the MCU's first steps into TV, with WandaVision releasing in January, Falcon Winter Soldier in March, and Loki in June. Modok was completely buried underneath all of that, and never really had a chance to be truly acknowledged by people, since the public never noticed it in the first place. And to me, that's what makes it so interesting, because this is sort of like the last remnants of a bygone era of Marvel, where MCU brand synergy wasn't a thing yet for the TV side of things, but yet still was released when the MCU was well over a decade into its popularity. Plus, even though taking the Marvel Universe and adding a bit of a laid-back adult comedic twist to it on the surface sounds like an interesting idea, especially with it focusing on more C-tier characters and giving them a chance to shine, the Harley Quinn show had 2 seasons out by the time Modok came out, providing the exact experience, but just for DC. So Modok already felt like a dated concept by the time it was released. But you might be asking, Blue, why are you talking about this nothing burger of a show no one remembers or cares about? Well, dear viewer, it's quite simple. I just felt like it and thought I'd make a fun video. Not a deep explanation, but it is an explanation. Let's move on then. The show follows Modok as he tries to salvage his failing marriage while attempting to have some kind of positive relationship with his 2 kids, on top of dealing with his failing company AIM being bought up by a Silicon Valley-like tech company, run by a dude who sounds like he'd shame me for eating any animal products, and being puppeteered by a bunch of aliens wanting to do something equally as evil as what actual tech CEOs do. Now, this question does need to be asked, but out of all the characters in the Marvel Universe to have an entire show focused on, why Modok? The character in general has never really been comedic and is usually played pretty straight in most media. In my eyes, he works much better as a side character others can bounce off of, rather than a full-fledged character himself. Because in the show, his personality is nothing like his comic counterpart, and instead has been Family Guy'd into being a schlubby, neglectful husband and spouse, who, more times than not, hurts the people around him, creating not only an entirely brand new personality for him, but also a cast of characters for him to interact with, who all fit into some played-out archetypes. An awkward son who's never able to be fully understood, a sarcastic teenage daughter, a wife who's clearly too good for him, and so on. Not only are the comic characters that do show up have barely anything to do with the show, but the original characters they created for this have nothing going for them. Bringing it back to Harley Quinn for a second, the reason the earlier seasons of that show worked was not only because of how well it utilized the DC universe in an adult comedy setting, but also because of how the characters were all well-rounded, with everyone providing something different. Harley is a lunatic with a lot of emotional baggage and drive to prove herself. Ivy is the straight man who, while a supervillain, does that more on the side and acts as the voice of reason. Clayface is a failed actor, Frank is a funny plant dude, Dr. Psycho is a douche, etc., etc. But for the most part, characters weren't changed in order to fit some type of pre-established archetypes, but instead had their basic personalities and characteristics turned up to 11 in order to fit a comedic setting more appropriately. Modok never really takes full advantage of the endlessness of the Marvel Universe, taking characters and locations from all around and messing with them. Sure, some C-list villains, Wonder Man and even Iron Man show up, but they're so rarely in the show and what parts they do play are so lackluster that they barely even get a participation trophy for showing up. For the most part, those are the only heavy hitters that do show up. No other members of the Avengers are present, Nick Fury isn't here, no cute cameos from the Fantastic Four, nothing. And yeah, locations like the bar with no name or Asgard are used, they feel more like window dressing rather than actual scenes for the characters to run around in, as most of the plots within the show focus on the boring family drama than actual cool supervillain shenanigans. All the characters that do play a part here, though, feel like a bunch of walking tropes whose sole function in the show is to be the funny one. Every character has a single trait that the writers hone in on, and then that's the extent of their personality, with maybe one or a couple other unlikable traits thrown in for good measure. So besides constantly trying to say something that could be funny, they literally have nothing else going for them besides half-assed emotional moments. And oh god, the comedy. Whether it be reference humor,
I'm way better than Mina Sovari.
gross-out jokes, violence, or more.
Dillman, Sherlock's got some news for you.
We saw some inappropriate images on your hard drive. Pretty rough stuff. The police are on their way.
Take your pick, Modok has a lot of different types of jokes, none of which land. Comedies have one sole job, to make you laugh. And unfortunately here, while there are sentences and scenes that can be described as having comedic potential, throughout the entire runtime of the show, there were only a handful of jokes that possibly got me to laugh a little bit. And the problems the jokes face can be summed up in 3 reasons: delivery, pacing, and foils. While the voice talent within the show is actually pretty good, with some great comedians lining the cast, for some reason, everyone delivers jokes in such unenthusiastic ways that I genuinely could not tell what was a joke or just regular dialogue.
I'll have you know, the last 6 times I ate here, I completely soiled my chair. But I count every 3 diarrheas as 1 strike. So, it's 3 more chair craps, and you're out, buddy.
Not in the sense of them being bored or something, but more like the voice direction was so bad that they keep similar tones for regular moments in joke telling. Because I'm sorry, Patton Oswalt saying mundane dialogue in a way that sort of sounds comedic is not how you write jokes. And for clearly trying to be a joke-omitted kind of comedy, the show, instead of constantly putting out joke after joke, has large moments of dead air, leading to other comedic moments which needed some build-up, feeling like they were afterthoughts. The writers never make up their mind on if they wanted the show to be a balls-to-the-walls insano fest where anything can happen, or a more dry comedy where the humorous moments are slower and the setups take more time in order for the jokes to hit harder, because that indecisiveness leads to the humor being all over the place, and to the point where nothing really comes off as funny.
Loving and thoughtful person.
Jackpot! Sorry, I just sold a sofa on Craigslist. This is huge for me.
Which is made worse when there isn't a straight man for the insanity of the show to bounce off of. Something crazy can happen, and almost everyone around treats it like it's just another Monday. There needed to be a character who wasn't used to the spontaneity of the Marvel Universe and acted as a foil to it, because without that foil, ironically, all of the crazy wacky stuff that goes on within the show just seems dull and boring. Though out of everything in this show thus far that I've talked about, the presentation is quite possibly the most baffling part of the whole experience. Obviously, stop-motion animation is pretty sweet. We don't get to see much of it nowadays due to how expensive and time-consuming it is. It's an art form that truly remains timeless, and compared to other forms of animation, has a charm to it that others really can't replicate. So seeing it used in a wacky Marvel project like this on the surface is really cool. It's just when you look more into it where problems start to arise. All it takes is one department dropping the ball to make everything look cheap, and the VFX team really did that. A lot of digital effects were used on the show, and while it is understandable to use, like with how most of the characters have their mouths superimposed, since constantly changing them frame by frame for a television level budget isn't realistic, I sort of draw the line at the massive amounts of green screening they use, because I thought the point of stop motion was that the things you're looking at are tangible. And it's not like Modok goes to such crazy locations that using green screen is a must, because the show uses pretty mundane locations for the most part, which looks worse when there's too many moments where characters and objects aren't properly composited. On top of the fact that the show is also shot like an episode of The Office or Parks and Recreation, where it has the handheld camera format, which doesn't really make sense since that's not what this show is. Like, there's moments like this where it seems like there's an actual cameraman there on the set, but they don't do anything with that, and it just feels like more time and effort were put onto the animators rather than being used on something else. So it's more baffling why creative decisions were made when they have no part to play in the overall show. But even beyond technical issues, the show sits in this weird spot of being obnoxious and mediocre, but also semi-decent, where I point to episode 6 being the best episode of the show in my opinion, where a higher amount of the jokes actually land, with a couple being pretty good. The character development as well is more naturally written and doesn't feel out of place, with there being a solid base for what it's tackling, with Modok coming off as a jerk in the beginning, until we see that's only because he was actively looking out for his own son and not wanting him to go through what he did as a kid, finishing his episode arc by accepting his kid and being less of an asshat towards him, while taking advantage of being in the Marvel Universe with almost the entirety of the episode being set in Asgard. It was what I was looking for in the show, an outlandish comedy with a heart using Marvel characters and locations. Though don't get the wrong idea, while this is the best episode, it's only semi-decent in comparison to the sea of mediocrity the rest of the show is. And with that, we get to the finale. After some time travel shenanigans in episode 2, a younger version of Modok has been planning his revenge in the background for the entire series, until he's killed in episode 8. But with the help of a classic cliche Dr. Doom would be proud of, the one that actually died was actually a robot. After getting into a fight and performing chaos control, younger Modok pulls an Infinity War style move, saying that out of all the possible futures, Modok dies in practically all of them except for one. The one that was hinted to from the very start of the show, where he finally kills the Avengers and creates his utopia, the thing he's always wanted in his entire life. However, with the small, insignificant, unremarkable catch that his family has to die in order for him to get the drive to make that future a reality, which creates a compelling dilemma for him, especially when he's been trying his best to be a better person, not only to his wife, but also a better father for his kids. Though of course, to the surprise of no one, in order to keep the status quo, he actually does it wow. The show just ends with him becoming the supreme leader he's always wanted to be, while attempting to bring his family back and have it all. But since the show never got a second season and is never getting picked up again, this means he never found a way to save them and stayed a depressed emperor for the rest of his life.
End of story. Bye-bye.
Even though the show attempted something different here, trying to shake up the status quo for the future, this interesting plot twist is kinda not great. Like, really think about this. This decision for Modok hinges on the fact that his dreams of conquest is greater than the love he has for his family. But since the writers did such a piss-poor job at showing that love, any personal conflict Modok should have doesn't make sense. The whole time the show has basically been a back and forth of Modok being a total dick, then learning his lesson for the episode, forgetting that lesson in the next episode, rinse and repeat. So when the time comes for him to choose between his family and being the God Emperor of mankind, the writers try to make it seem as though this is a difficult choice for him, when we the audience know it never was. Funny how the only consistent thing about Modok himself is how shitty of a person he is, and I'm guessing that was unintentional. And in a hypothetical season 2, what was he supposed to do? Bring them back and apologize for killing them? The writers wrote themselves into a corner, since this moment makes Modok irredeemable, when we're supposed to sympathize with him. But for being such a baffling show, in a weird or poetic kind of way, it deserved a baffling ending. Modok is a show that intrigues me, because it isn't devoid of creativity or effort like some of the flaming trash Netflix tries to peddle, because there's little glimpses here and there that show it's not completely inept, but it just never really goes anywhere beyond those moments. Yeah, the animation looks nice and stop motion is always a fun thing to see, but with the heavy use of VFX within the show, which weren't properly edited in to look normal, it takes away from the unique charm stop motion has. The writing is extremely hit or miss, where they'll occasionally be a funny line or gag, followed up by things that I believe are supposed to be jokes, but aren't funny. while also having dialogue that either feels incredibly unnatural or genuine and nice. It's completely scattershot, with characters that go through some change during the course of the season, but then end up being the exact same as they were at the start, or having others that barely leave any kind of impression on you by the end. So once everything is said and done, Modok doesn't really stand out as anything special, just mediocre. More as a weird little footnote in Marvel's history than anything that really deserves to be remembered. And that's probably the worst fate any piece of art can face. Because say what you will about stuff like She-Hulk, but her twerking is ingrained into Marvel. You'll probably remember that. But before you saw this video, did you remember the Modok show? Or even know of its existence? Probably not.